What is up guys, Greedy Knight here with a breakdown on Maximum Might and Tenderizer. Most of the crit builds I've been using pair these skills to grant most charge blades in the game 80 affinity. In order to get your crits, these skills make you work for it, which is why I'm covering this topic. Let's get into it. After 3 seconds of not evading, you will gain 30 affinity using Maximum Might level 3. Evading at any point will deactivate the skill and you will have to wait 3 additional seconds to regain the affinity. The reason I run this for crit builds is because it gives 30 affinity for 3 level 2 decos. This is one of the few skills that you can maintain for your crit builds. Pairing this with Tenderizer yields 80 affinity from any 0 affinity weapon, so you can use any weapon in the game that isn't negative in affinity. Morphing Advance will be your main non-evade option while you have a wire bug. It covers more ground than an evade, so use it to close distances while keeping your 30 affinity. After the slide, you can chain a second morphing advance by morphing to sword and shield mode using ZR, since it's your quickest option, and then zip again. The second non-evade tech is Fade Slash. It's a wire bugless version of morphing advance. Use similar inputs for morphing advance, but perform them after any attack. It will always end in the roundhouse slash, so you are safe during the end of the move. The best quality of these techs is that you can chain them into each other. Either use a Fade Slash into a morphing advance into Fade Slash, or double Fade Slash and double morphing advance. All of these are movement options you can abuse to maintain affinity and thus your critical hits. It's definitely not a generically good skill for all of the weapons, but it synergizes with Charge Blade if you use your tools effectively. There are situations where you will be forced to evade, like when you are low on health or when you need the wirefall. Either way, you are losing your affinity to stay alive. You do lose some damage during the 3-second window, but you should take that time to heal to stall out those 3 seconds. Out of habit, a lot of players who use this skill will evade instead of using their movement options. Maximum Might as a skill is not for everyone, but if you invest time to practice the anti-evade playstyle, then you can use any charge blade and gain 30 affinity for quote-unquote free. Since most people use weakness exploit, they already know how to use it, but this section is for people who don't know how it works. At weakness exploit level 3, if you hit a weak spot, that hit will gain 50 affinity. A weak spot is defined as having 45 or more on a hit zone in the hunter notes. However, there are other ways to identify a weak spot without looking it up. When you hit the monster, the damage values have colors. White represents bad hit zones, yellow represents good hit zones. Keep a mental note of the damage you apply on yellow hit zones. Hit the yellow hit zones with the highest values and those spots will likely be weak spots. The monster will move around, so you have to stay mobile to apply good damage. This is why Maximum Might and Weakness Exploit synergize with Morphing Advance and Fade Slash. Use your movement options to maintain your 30 affinity, aiming at a monster's weak spots via directional inputs to gain 50 affinity on hit, yielding 80 affinity. Using the large range of your Savage Axe chops, very few monsters can escape the range of your spinning chops and positioning. Weakness Exploit is terrible against monsters that have hard to hit and non-existent weak spots. Bizarrios and Raknakadaki are the primary culprits of invalidating Weakness Exploit. When rummaging through the hunter notes for matchup info, check if a monster has at least one hit zone with 45 or above, and keep note whether you can hit it reliably before gemming in Weakness Exploit. This is a case of working with your skills instead of making your skills work for you. For most builds I made, you only have room for 6 slots with crit up built in. Since these are the only level 2 deco skills that give the most affinity for your slots, these skills are staple on any crit build for 0 affinity charge blades due to the easy access to on-demand 80 affinity. Critical Eye requires 3 more slots to match the 30 affinity of Maximum Might. It could instead be invested in skills like Master's Touch, Protective Polish, Artillery, or Attack Up depending on the charge blade and if you have the room. If a weapon doesn't need sharpness, you can use the Kaiser Helm for builds, but only Narga, Tigrex, and a handful of other charge blades can afford to forego sharpness modifiers. Blunt builds degrade heavily from hit zone reduction, so white sharpness weapons are the only reliable source of crit related damage, which is why I use Kushala Helm for a lot of these sets. Kushala is 30 free affinity when paired with Savage Axe. This is a weapon-specific version of Chain Crit for Monster Hunter GU. If there was a way to use it on every weapon, it would be much better than Maximum Might. Affinity sliding is too inconsistent to use. The only real way to use it is during the first encounter of a hunt, while you are sliding down at the speed of sound. If it could proc from Morphing Advance or Fade Slash, Affinity sliding would be mandatory. Latent power is on some of my builds, but that is because of the Rajang Pants. It's too inconsistent to rely on, but when it is procced, it gives a 30% affinity boost at level 2. I wouldn't max out the skill, but 2 to 3 points seems to be the sweet spot for passive 100% affinity. Using Rajang pieces will get the skill with Maximum Might built into your sets. Like if this video was helpful to you, consider subscribing if you are new to the channel and want to see more Charge Blade content like this. Comment down below any topic you want me to cover and I'll add it to the list. That's all I have for this one. Greedy Knight, signing out.